Well, thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
Yay. And welcome back, everybody, to That's What He Said. So I need to explain your names before I start calling you, because that's confusing. So the last name is Stanley. This is John Stanley and Sarah Stanley, but nobody calls you John as far as I'm aware.
Well,
I never have.
In Sarah's circles, definitely not. Definitely not.
Everybody who knows him through me calls him Stanley.
Right.
Stanley.
Right.
And they don't even know his...
Where did that even come from? Did you start that?
Yes.
Terrible ex-boyfriend.
Yes. It was an ex-boyfriend name was John.
Mm.
And so when I would say I'm going on a date with John, people would be like, oh, no. And I'm like, no. This is John.
Oh, been there.
Stanley.
We had a 1.0 and a 2.0.
Yes. So they were like, we're just not even going to say the first name at all.
Right.
Yeah.
And then my sister and I, because I lived with my sister at the time, we liked saying, Stanley. I'm going on a date with Stanley. Stanley. And so then it was just like we kept saying it. And then when we got serious, I tried to switch it back to John. And he was like, that sounds
It felt really weird. It was really strange.
So it got stuck. And even the kids would call him, my dad's name is Stanley.
Yeah. No. Yes.
So it's stuck.
Yeah.
It's stuck. Mm-hmm.
So we have Stanley, and tell us what you do.
Man.
All of the many hats that you wear.
All of the hats. Okay, so outside of being a husband and a father, I am a composer and music producer, and I'm also a pastor.
Hence the...
Right.
In the background.
Yes. But I write music for TV shows and films and a lot of stuff.
And you had music on a dating show.
I do. Yeah, Love is Blind for sure on Netflix. Yeah.
Do you know which season that was?
Yeah, 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
But your music was on the show.
Mm-hmm.
Which is super cool.
Yeah. Actually a couple other episodes on that rotated into season 4, and so it's crazy. I mean, that was a really fun thing.
Yeah.
Especially to know the show's been nominated for an Emmy and a People's Choice Awards and stuff like that. So really cool, really fun.
Do you have a website or anything? That
I do, johnstanleymusic.com, so anybody can go and check it out.
johnstanleymusic.com, yes. And I'll put that in the description of the episode.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. That'd be awesome for sure. So I'm also an author.
Your book.
Yeah.
I love your book. I've given it to so many people.
Yeah.
So it's called Surrender.
Oh, yes.
And it's so good. And it's a teal cover. It matches my living room.
Yeah.
It's in there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah.
So I'll link that too. That you can buy it through Amazon.
You can do Amazon, or CLC Publications as well. So which is my publisher.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that has a lot of really cool stories.
Mm-hmm.
I won't give it away, but analogies and cool stories from your life.
Yes, definitely. I mean, go check it out. Go read it. It's got a lot of our life story in it for sure.
Yeah.
So.
And you're an ordained pastor, right? So you're not aware of this, but you are doing my wedding.
Yes.
I will gladly do your wedding. Absolutely.
This was decided several years ago without you. But
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And
I would happily do your wedding. For
and
sure.
it would be somewhere topical. You can buy for free. I'll bring you in. And
that'd be awesome.
So that's
that'd
your
be
role
awesome.
one day.
I would love to do that. Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I would love to have you read my vows, but I know you won't do that. You'll be like,
I know, I will. I'll be like, you're gonna have to hold it in front of me.
So you can just hold the train.
I'll dance it instead.
Yes.
I know.
I'll have to find courage to read those.
Yes.
I'm
always fond of trying to figure out how to make weddings really interesting. So
Is there a way to lip talk? Have it pre-recorded and it just then that way it just stand there?
Maybe. No. Yeah.
I know. I'm getting
just
to do.
Get you a Britney Spears mic so you're not shaking.
Exactly.
You're great in front of people.
No, you say that,
but
she is. She does not feel like she is, but she
and
really
my
is.
insides shake. I shake, and then I just don't like it.
I'm about to go through the wedding ceremony with my parents on their 50th. It's this year, and so they've asked me if I would help them recommit their vows and walk through all that. So it's be fun. It's be fun.
And so on that note, I have known Sarah for 15 years. And to make it simple, she was my dance instructor. to give a simple explanation.
Yes.
And today she's my really close friend and mentor. That's what I call you to other people.
Yes. Yes. No, I feel like that.
But if anybody has like, do you have a mentor? I'm like, yes. I didn't pick her, but it just happened.
Yes. Yeah.
God said you need this.
Oh man.
Yes.
And then you just stuck around. I couldn't get rid of you.
She's an amazing mentor to so many. Yeah.
Yes.
I feel like a mentor, but then like now I feel like sometimes you mentor me. So like it's vice versa.
Yeah.
Like,
now it's become a really just unique, special friendship.
It is very cool.
Yeah.
Because I mean, like high school, like you were how old when you met her?
15.
Yeah. She was
Or technically I was 14 when I met her.
Yeah.
And then we didn't really connect until I was about 15, like a year later.
It's amazing. Yeah. I love to see that with the ministry that she invested in and the friendships and the mentorships that continue.
Yeah.
Even through that. It's crazy.
Definitely.
Very cool.
Yeah. So, and you tell us about His Hop.
So His Hop is just it's a Christian dance program where it actually got started in 2005. I had some moms come up to me and say, our daughters love doing His Hop, or they love doing hip hop. But every time they go, there's this dancing that's twerking, grinding. They're wearing like tiny little outfits.
And like 8 years old.
And a dad was like, my daughter just danced a womanizer on a stage in like practically a bikini.
Yeah.
And so they said, would you be willing to teach hip hop for our girls and it be, clean? I was like, absolutely.
Yeah.
And we can call it His Hop because it's going to be about Jesus. And so we use Christian music. We sometimes use secular songs, but we make it about Him. Everything we do is about Him because I just believe so strongly in what we listen to, what we are reading, what we are watching, how we are using our body. I did not grow up realizing that it's important what you listen to. The songs I chose to listen to, I love the beat. I didn't think that the words mattered, but they do. And so to plant that into little kids and just be like, it's important what you're listening to. It's important how you're using your body. Like, is it to glorify the Lord or something else? So we do that. We do summer camps. We do semesters, do birthday parties, all of that. So, Yay.
Yeah.
And Natalie helps teach sometimes,
I
too.
do. Yes.
Yes.
And my niece goes.
Yes. Yeah.
And she loves it. So it's honestly a great program. And I have loved to see how it has grown.
Yes.
It's grown from nothing into something.
I know.
So
and
it kind of inspires me
huge
with this.
prayer.
Yeah, because I'm not a business person, so I'm like, I just want to teach kids to dance for Jesus. But
you're able to use your gift.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and that's key. I mean, because that was a huge answer to prayer for me. Because when we first got married, I mean, she was heavily involved in all of that. But then when time came for us to have kids, we made the decision. And we really felt God putting on our hearts that she needed to be at home. Yeah. And be a stay-at-home mom. And so one of my biggest prayers, and I remember writing it down, I still have it written down, was that God, please continue to use her gifts. When time comes for that to open back up, don't allow her to be able to continue that and pour it into these young girls. And she's so passionate about it. And she's given up a lot to be a mom, And so please enable that to grow even in motherhood. And it really has. I mean, it's a huge answer to prayer.
Yeah, huge.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So tell me kind of like the story of from when y'all met up until you got married. Like what, how did this, y'all are like a couple goals, like the picture perfect, just amazing couple and family.
Did not start out that way because she thought I was the biggest jerk ever.
Which benefited you because I apparently was drawn to jerks. So, but he really wasn't a real one, so that's good. But it was in 2005. I came on staff at the church in 2005 of May. We met in August. He was doing music and I was doing the choreography. We had a talk.
Like coordinating.
Yes, coordinating. Yes.
Okay.
And I remember he was just very standoffish, and I was like, man, he's like a jerk. Oh, he's so hot. Like it was like kind of like that. But I need to like learn my lesson. And then at the end of August, and he asked me out right after that. Like and it's actually on camera, so we have a picture. I could send it to you. It's a picture. So one of the directors was doing a toe touch off the stage at the very end, and someone snapped a picture of it. And this was at the end of the performance,
Yeah.
and he had his backpack, and he was getting ready to pull a piece of paper out, because that's how we got our numbers.
Back in the day, right? Yeah.
Oh.
With a piece of paper, you actually wrote it down.
Yeah.
And so he was getting that out, and he asked if he could take me on a date, and I gave him my number, and we're in the background. I'm like this, and he's like writing down my number. This was on the altar of the church.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you had to write down numbers back then.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
No, there was no quick sharing with numbers at all.
Tap our phones together.
Or
Yeah.
what guys do now, where they won't even ask you anymore, and they just wait until later, and they follow you on Instagram, and then message you through Instagram.
Oh yeah, DMs or something.
Yes.
We
They-
had none of that. So
they just will get your name or find out your name from somebody else, and then search you and look you up
Wow.
and add you and stalk you, and then message you.
Oh yeah.
And then maybe ask for your number later.
Yeah.
That's a very different
world.
scenario.
Yeah.
It's a terrible scenario.
Yeah.
That is awful.
Yeah.
That is weak. That's what I'd say.
Yeah, it is.
So he asked me out. I went to the elevator and screamed so loud because I was so excited. And we went on our first date to Saltgrass.
Yep.
Fancy.
Yeah, I know, right? Big time.
And then, so that was August 2005.
Can't
and
go
then
too big just
May 2006, he proposed on the altar. It was my birthday, and I was praying that the Lord would protect my heart from knowing when someone was going to be my husband, because I didn't ever want to be one of those girls that was like, is it going to happen now? Is it going to happen now? Is it going to happen now? So I was like, don't tell me. Don't even let me know who my husband is until it's time. And before he picked me up for my birthday, that May of 2006, I just got this overwhelming feeling. And I looked at this picture, and it was a picture someone had drawn of me, of you know the footprints in the sand. Have you ever heard that one where you see there's two footsteps? It's Jesus's and yours.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden you only see one set of footsteps when you're in pain. It's because he's carrying you. Mm-hmm. So someone drew that for me, Jesus carrying me, because I went through something difficult in high school. And I looked at that picture, and then I saw a picture of Stanley and I just felt like the Lord was like, here, I'm going to be in his arms on this earth, if that makes sense. Like my earthly provider, protector, and I just started weeping, and I was like, oh, he's gonna be my husband. I'm like, but he hasn't asked, so now I know. So at the birthday, I just kept saying, it's just a birthday, it's just a birthday, it's just a birthday, even though I know he's gonna be my husband. And there's roses all down the aisle of the altar of the church. This is just a birthday present. This is just a birthday present. And until he got down on his knee.
Yep.
But then, and then we got married.
Yeah.
The next day, we didn't get married.
We did not get married the next day.
The next day, I went to go get a dress. I found a dress, and I was like, okay.
Oh, you found a dress the next day?
The next day.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Yeah.
And was like, how long till I can get this in? And they said 5 months. And so October, we got married.
Wow.
It was pretty fast.
Yeah. I mean, I thought when I first met her, I thought she was obviously beautiful. But I was still trying to find my footing on what all I was going to be doing in life. And so, but for me, this is terrible. It really is terrible. But I had dated quite a bit through college and dated quite a bit after college, and had kind of learned, at first you don't want to just be all out there, you're 100% interested and just go overboard.
Yeah.
But you still want to show some kind of interest, up front. But you need to be careful. You don't want to just throw everything out on the table all at once.
Why is that? Why would you say you need to be careful?
I think that you need to be. I think a man is wise to withhold everything that's going on inside of him to maintain some mystery, to maintain just the beauty of what dating really is. I mean, there's a lot to getting to know somebody, and I feel like if somebody comes off too strong at first, it's kind of like that's
what they call love bombers.
Right.
That's it. Yes.
That would make great sense.
New term, where they right from the beginning. And I'm still trying to figure out what that is.
Yeah.
If I've been through that recently or not, but where they just kind of whether it's truthful or not truthful, just showering you with compliments and sweeping you off your feet and telling you that they see you as a wife, very early on, which early on, is relative. So that's where it kind of gets hard. And then it's like, is this real? Is it not real?
Yeah. Well, see, and I think that there's a danger. It's so funny because I write music for a show where this kind of goes on. But I think the danger in today's society where we see a lot of, you watch The Bachelor or you watch Love is Blind, and within a few weeks, it's all of a sudden it's this unity and it's marriage, and that is not reality. It's not reality. Reality TV is not reality. I can't even tell you all the stuff that they do on Love is Blind. Like, there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that there's some script to it.
Yeah.
Same thing with The Bachelor. There's a lot of script to that.
Yeah.
And The Bachelorette. Like, and people think that that's reality, but it's not. And so I think that our society there's been a culture, a generation of people that have grown up seeing love, but it's not really love. It's infatuation.
Yeah.
And then when the infatuation wears off, you see people break apart. And that's why I say with any guy coming into any new relationship, you got to be real careful. And you don't, like you said, love bomber. That's a great word for it.
Yeah.
If you're all gushy and just upfront and over dramatic about marriage and yada, yada, yada. I mean, if we really understood what marriage was, we would not throw that around lightly. And that's something else I really stood up against, because I did not feel like that's not a light scenario. I mean, I lost 40 pounds in our engagement. Within 4 months, I lost 40 pounds.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
Segue into what happened.
Because of how serious.
And like how you guys were stressed.
Yeah. But how serious it is. I mean, it's a very serious commitment. It's not just something that you just fly by. And with us, our faith is very strong. We believe that God commissioned marriage. I mean, he made it to be a very serious covenant between a husband and a wife, between a man and a woman.
Yeah.
And it is not something to be easily broken. And the scripture is very clear that what God has joined together, let man not separate. Now, that's used in a lot of weddings because of the seriousness of the covenant of what you're entering into. And so I didn't take that lightly. So that's why I'm like, you don't just jump into something and within a few days of knowing somebody or a few weeks tell somebody that they're wife material, or it just degrades the whole thing.
Yeah.
It just automatically just puts it down.
Yeah.
And so you have to be real, real careful. I believe any man who is worth his salt is wise in how he approaches a relationship with a woman. And he approaches it slowly. He approaches it at times a little standoffish. And it's not always to draw somebody in. Sometimes it's just to say, I'm not going to lead you into thinking that this is going to be some fast, quick thing. And I'm not going to lead you into thinking that this is going to be some everlasting commitment we're making to one another.
Yeah.
We're taking it slow.
Charming.
Yeah. We're going to take it slow. And that's a very serious thing. And so I took that very seriously. And so that's why I wasn't just gushy all about it at first. I was very standoffish.
Yeah.
And part of that was to say, I'm not up for grabs. I mean, I'm not up for grabs like immediately. Like, we need to see where this goes, and we need to be careful how we take it.
So most of our episodes, there's sort of like a main topic question, something that women want or need to know the answer to from a man's point of view. And so we're already kind of getting there. But the question overall for today is, what makes a man fall in love? And I'm asking that question because of kind of what we're talking about. Like, that's the fairy tale. That's what everybody wants and is focused on when it comes to relationships and the happily ever after. But somewhere in between the falling in love and the happily ever after, everybody has gone left.
Right.
And we're like, why are we aiming for this? And we're we're not hitting the target. We're way off of that target.
Yeah.
And so can you kind of answer that question for you? Like, obviously you fell in love with Sarah, maybe you were in love in the past, but what does that actually mean?
Yeah. So I would say, especially, there were times with people that I would fall in love, but Vodi Bakum said it. I don't know if you know who Vodi Bakum is. He's a great pastor, great speaker, teacher in the faith. And he said, I don't believe in falling in love. He said, because anything you fall into, you can climb out of. Yeah. And so that hit me pretty hard at an early age. We kind of go back and forth, because I was like a 2-weeker in college. Like, I would date a girl for about 2 weeks and then break it off.
Okay.
And she's always like, you were a player. And I'm like, well, okay. I mean, I understand how it comes across like that. But in part of me was like, it was just me knowing. Like after 2 weeks, I'm like, ain't gonna happen.
Yeah.
I don't want to drag this out. I don't want to drag you along. So we're gonna end it. And so for me
Hopefully you
specifically,
didn't ghost them.
I know. I don't know. Did you?
I never ghosted.
We haven't got there.
Okay.
No, I never ghosted.
No, he's so honest and clear. He's just very like, I'm done with you.
That's
like,
good.
I just
That's
like
good.
I believe integrity. You have to be a man of integrity. You have to be a man of character. And those kinds of things lead you into having face-to-face conversations.
Right.
And they're tough. But goodness, if as a man, if you're expected to lead a family and you can't have an honest conversation with a woman, you are a weak-minded individual.
Yep.
So if you can't do that, I question who you are as a man, personally. Mm-hmm. And so I did not believe that you could just haphazardly fall in love. I think you grow into love.
What does that mean from a man's point of view? Like, what to you does falling in love mean?
So for me personally, like I said, I don't think that you fall into love. I think that, again, anything you fall into, you can climb your way out of. I think it's a growth. I think it is a slow process. And I think you have to get to the point where you get past infatuation. It is so easy in the earlier stage of marriage, in the earlier stage of a relationship, to say that I love this person or I love this about this person. That's great.
You're basing
and that's cool.
Feeling.
Yeah.
It's not,
Yeah, and it's all based on infatuation. And that's wonderful. It should be. I mean, relationships, the newness of relationships are so fun and they're cool and they're lighthearted and everything's just a really exciting adventure, right? Yeah. And this guy or this girl's like perfect. But eventually there's going to be some kinks in the armor. Eventually there's going to be the reality that sets in that this dude has some messed up stuff.
Some aches.
Yeah. This girl, wow, there's some serious past issues here that we got to kind of work through. That is when your commitment begins to be tested. That's whenever you begin to realize, oh man, do I really want to commit to this person for the rest of my life?
Yeah.
That's where the growth begins. That's where the bond begins to happen. And so I would say for me personally, as a man, early on, when we first got married, the thing that drew me to Sarah, number one, after the infatuation phase, because once we got past 6 weeks, I had never really been in a relationship past 6 weeks in my entire life.
Oh, wow.
Ever.
Okay.
Yes.
And once we got past 6 weeks, I began to go, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Because by 6 weeks, things start to show.
Yeah.
And I think...
But on the third date, you asked me all of the questions.
I did.
Because he was very like, I need to know if I should keep pursuing you or not. So let's just go ahead. And I'm like, I barely know you. And I'm supposed to answer all these questions?
Yeah.
Well, okay.
Yeah. And I think those are the kinds of things, like, you need to be willing to ask your partner questions. And you can't just go on the physicality of things. And like the Bible says, beauty fades and charm is deceptive. Yeah. And so you got to get past all that stuff. And I believe if you're going to keep a relationship going, you might as well get past it quickly because you need to know. You need to know. Because again, it's a very serious thing. It's not a haphazard, let's just have fun kind of vibe. I mean, a marriage is a serious covenant. And you get to a point in life where you realize, I'm tired of just dating. I do eventually want a relationship that lasts. And I want marriage. You call it a fairy tale. Marriage is not a fairy tale in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah. And that's really important for people to hear, because those of us that didn't grow up seeing marriage, or maybe not a good marriage, you naturally make it out to be a fairy tale in your mind, because everybody has that, I think, innately in them, that they want marriage and family. That's the way we're designed. So if you grow up and you don't know what that is, you have to make it up. You have to learn, figure out what it is. And so where do you learn? Hollywood, TV, reality TV, looking at other people that you don't know. And that's shoved in our faces. I mean, The Bachelor and Love is Blind, that's a modern day cartoon Cinderella, basically.
Yes. Where they want to build it as a fairy tale, right?
And marriage has fairy tale moments.
It does.
It's like, the time we call them our heavenly moments.
But going back to your original question, like the thing that made me grow in love with Sarah, I fully believe, was number one, her faith. And I think it's really important. I think if you're an individual of faith, you need to have a like-mindedness about your pursuit and about your beliefs. For us, and for me, that's the foundation of my life. And so my relationship with the Lord, by the saving grace of Jesus, all of that is the foundation on which I build my life. And I'm under the authority then, under him, which is under his word, which is under scripture. And so in that, because of that, and because of what the Bible teaches us about husband and wife and about the relationship and how that exists, that's how I need to seek to exist. But I also had great mentors in my life that came along whenever we got engaged. And one guy sat me down and he said, "Are you ready to be like Jesus? Are you ready to serve like Jesus? Are you ready to give it all like Jesus?" I was like, let's walk through that, because that's heavy.
Yeah, what does
that
mean?
is a heavy thing. And so all that to say, for her faith, like, and her pursuit of the Lord was really key, because I saw that genuine pursuit in her. And so that drew me to her all the more, which she's physically gorgeous, right? But then at some point you realize and you understand that beauty fades. And so
Sadly.
it does. Although you've gotten so much prettier as you've gotten older. But like, as things move forward in your marriage, in your relationship, you want to see that faith continue to build, because it builds everything else. And with us, I saw that in her, and I knew that she was pursuing that relationship with the Lord, which drew me in all the more. And then as we began to ask questions, we had a question book. And I got this question book, and I mean, it was like 250 questions or 500.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
And we'd just go through them. Like, we'd go on road trips, and
we'd
she's
just
just
read 'em.
reading through them.
Oh,
And we're
that's
just,
fun.
we spent the
it was
whole time
fun.
in the car talking.
Yeah.
Just about, hey,
Go to Barnes
yeah.
and Noble and find books.
We'd sit
question
down
books,
and we'd just
sit down
ask
and
each
just, like,
other.
ask each other
And there were
questions.
some of them were
Yeah.
stupid questions, some of
Yeah.
them were really serious questions.
Yeah.
And we would just kind of go through those things to see how like-minded we were. I do think that that's really important.
Yeah.
I think a similar background is very helpful. We had a very similar background in our families, and our families pursued the same faith. Our mom and dads really held together in marriage. I believe a like-mindedness in your faith is very, very critical. I think it's really critical that the husband and the wife have the same viewpoint on how a husband and wife are to operate in a marriage. That is really key, because I've seen too much. And being a pastor at a church, you talk to people where you see, man, that never aligned.
Yeah.
And they've been together 10 years, and all of a sudden they're beginning to figure out our viewpoints on how that exists is very different.
So what's kind of the dynamic between the two of y'all? Like, if you could describe, like, kind of your role in the relationship, your role, where you butt heads, where you clash, where you mesh perfectly.
So I will say the transition to the wife, what the wife is supposed to be for the husband, was hard for me. When we were engaged, I remember really struggling with the whole, like, submitting thing.
Submitting, yeah.
Yes, because I was like, no, I want to make my own decisions and do what I want to do when I want to do it. I don't want to, like, ask permission.
You felt like it was, like, control.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
no doubt.
So I remember sitting down and talking with a woman, a mentor, and she said, Sarah, it is not about trusting your man. It's about trusting God's design. Do you trust God's design? And I was like, yes, of course I do. And she said, then that's it. Like, that's how he designed it. The wife is to submit to the husband. And from that moment, I was like, it kind of made sense, not in that I'm like putting all my trust in him to make every right decision and lead this family and lead me well. And I'm trusting God. And what helps me so much, I tell him all the time, it's so easy because, I mean, before I even open my eyes in the morning, he is in here doing his devotions. He's on his knees praying. Like, I know that I am following Jesus and following him, if that makes sense, because he seeks him. And then in me submitting to him, I know that I'm just right in line. Like, sometimes it's scary. I tell him, sometimes I get this picture of, you know, him, I've said it recently a lot, here on this motorcycle, and I'm on the little sidecar with my helmet being like, okay, here we go. Like, but
I love how you get pictures in your mind. It's really good stories.
Yes.
Yeah, but submitting is something, especially in the culture that we live in, it has a very negative connotation. But I think it's because people don't understand what it means.
Yeah.
And because I think there's been so many fatherless homes and not good fathers and husbands that do lead the woman in a bad direction. And
And it's been abused.
A good description of submission that I've recently heard, like from the woman's point of view, is that you should be able to hold your man's hand and close your eyes, and he should lead you somewhere that you want to go.
Yes.
Yeah.
And wherever you end up should be better than where you thought you were going to go.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
So it's better than what you can do on your own.
Yes.
And you can have your eyes shut the whole time and be, grateful and pleasantly surprised when you open them up.
Yes.
Right.
And if I were the leading, I would be bald because I would be ripping out all my hair because I cannot handle the stress. And that is what he is made to do, is to lead. And it is so much, I'm like, thank you, Jesus. Like, I'm so glad that you understand how this is supposed to work, because I get to like hold his hand and be like, here we go, honey. Let's go.
Yeah.
Well, and I will say, I think it's really important for husbands to understand that, because it's been abused. Most definitely husbands have abused it. And I think it's really important for husbands to realize it's a mutual submission in all truth. It's not just the wife submitting to the man. Yeah. It's the man out of love and in service submitting to the wife at times. And so it's a mutual thing. And I think that's something that we miss, because I think women tend to see it as, well, that makes me the lesser. It really doesn't, because if you look at how Christ is with the church, what does Christ do to the church? He elevates the church. He raises it up, right? So if you're a follower of him, he elevates you. He raises you to where you need to be. And I think a lot of times, I think a great explanation that I've seen given, or that I've heard given, is that out of a wife and a husband, say they're at a crossroads and a decision that needs to be made, right? And so the wife says, I'll submit to you and what you decide. And the husband says, thank you, but because I love you, let's figure this out together. And how can I make this decision that will elevate you and not just me? And so you may come at a crossroads here, but when she does her part and then you do your part, you actually end up elevating, and you elevate her, and you elevate the marriage, and you elevate the family. Yeah. That's how it's supposed to work. It's not supposed to be this, I lord it over you, you do whatever I say you need to do. Right. It's not that at all. Because if it's done right, there's a lot of freedom. There's a lot of freedom. It's actually more freedom than possibly you could even imagine, to where sometimes she'll come back and be like, what am I supposed to do here? Because there's such a level of trust. And I think any marriage has to have that. But I think the wife has to know and trust that her husband is seeking and doing everything that he needs to do to build the foundation of the marriage up. Yeah. And I think it does come along with the husband being willing to sacrifice what he needs to sacrifice, to give up what he needs to give up. In order to do that. What kind of sacrifice? So I would say, if I were still single, I would be probably in Hollywood and living in LA or living in Beverly Hills and making a life of just a film composer and just living my life like that. When we got married, we talked about this, and I said, you're my dream. That's
I love that. I remember where we were sitting. Yeah, he said, I've always had this dream, and he said, but now you're my dream.
You're my dream.
And his pursuit has been that.
Yeah.
In this family.
And that's where some of the sacrifice comes in, but it actually elevated things way beyond anything I think I could have ever imagined. Because I could have, say I moved out to LA, the chances of anybody getting into the film world, even out there, I know so many guys who have done that and have failed miserably at it, because they're just like, we don't have any inroads or whatever. But when God moved that priority into place for me, and he called me to make that decision, that sacrificial decision, well, then he began to work things out on that end of things. And I'm like, if that's where you want me to go eventually down the road, then you're going to have to work that out, because now my focus is here. Yeah. And God's like, well, yeah, man, I got that.
It's like, I want you to have both.
I got it. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So stay in alignment with your priorities and everything else. And it's the Matthew 6:33 principle. Seek first the kingdom of God, and everything else will come together. Yeah. So that kingdom mindset is, and what did God institute on this earth before he ever instituted anything as far as a covenantal expression goes? Between he and man, but then between man and woman, right? It's a very serious thing. So when he brings that together and he unites that, again, what God has joined together, let man not separate. I'm the man that does not need to separate that. She's creation that does not need to separate. That is woman. But and then nothing else. So that continues to take priority. And as long as that takes priority and that takes place, then everything else falls into place the way it needs to. But because of that, and because of that pursuit, God has provision for us far greater than I could have ever imagined. And he also, with our kids, has solidified them in a wonderful foundation in the community here. Sarah, in a wonderful community, has given her influence in our community through not just his hop, but through other things as well, through school. We've just seen so much of that take place, and that's God's design for that. But it's me pushing away my selfish desires to now just do everything I want to do, and then just her just jump in line with that, and just going, okay, I'm going to serve you. I'm going to take seriously the role of provider. I'm going to seek to do that, and then let God work out the rest of the details. And he has, and it's been far better and far greater than anything I could have ever imagined. And when we talk about it, I don't even see it. It's not slowing down. It continues to go.
And you always include me. You're always like asking and praying with me and tell me things. It's not like I'm just going to do all of these things and I'll let you know later. It is something we always walk through together. We're on our knees in the closet, praying, banging our fists on the floor together. It is, it's not like, I'm just going to do this and let you know what the plan is.
And I think that what you're hitting on about sacrifice or submission to God is something where a lot of men, even Christian men, are struggling because for whatever reason, I don't know why, but having trouble making that decision that you made of I'm going to sacrifice the sparkly, glamorous sex, drugs, and rock and roll, living fast and dying young. I'm going to sacrifice that even though it sounds really, really good and it's really, really fun for God's design, for marriage, for this thing that I have to submit into. And then, women are just left kind of grasping at straws. And, since these men are going left, now we're going left with them, and everybody's off track. So it's hard for us to be okay, what do I want? What am I looking for? Does he check these qualities if he doesn't even know what he wants and what he's looking for and what he wants in life and where God's calling him? And I think the way you're describing the sacrifice is key, because you're saying that after you did that, after you made that sacrifice, which really isn't a sacrifice, the way you're describing it, it's more of a submission or a surrender.
Exactly.
Then, as you let it play out with patience and time, God is going to make your life something way better than it would have been.
But that's his design too, right?
He's always better.
It's always better.
Always better. You just gotta give it the time to let it flourish and blossom the way he needs it to. And I think a lot of times it's like a gardener with the soil. My dad's a big gardener, and we were just talking about this. My brother's out gardening with him. My brother asked him.
Squashes.
But my brother asked him. He said, because my dad was so focused on the soil, and my brother's like, you're so focused on the soil before you even plant the seeds. And he's like, I don't understand this. We need to fertilize the plants. And my dad's like, no, that's not how that works. He said, we garden the soil. We get the soil prepped. And then after that, what we plant into it will then blossom and grow beautifully into what we need it to. And I think that's what God wants to do with I know that's what he wants to do with our lives. Is he says, I want to plant these seeds, but we got to get the soil prepped and we got to get all this stuff going, and it's going to come in time. But we get in such a rush, and we sacrifice what is better for the immediate gratification.
Especially nowadays.
That's
the world we live in. Amazon Prime.
Right.
You don't have to. This is more graphic, but for men, it used to be really hard to see a naked woman. And now it's just all you do is open your phone. And so, literally instant gratification.
And we sacrifice something so far greater because of the immediate gratification, because of the immediate, and we're not willing to wait for it. And I think that's just the enemy's tool of snagging us where he wants to snag us, and he holds us back. And I think, man, we would have such a powerful force of great leading men if they were just willing to wait and they had the maturity to go, I'm going to see this through. I'm going to see this through. I'm going to do what God's calling me to do. Because when God plants, it takes a lot of patience to see those things grow and to see the fruit to bear. But it's really worth it. But as I remember my dad would always tell me, good things take time, better things take even more time. And for so much of us in today's society, it's just like the quick and the now and the boom, boom. I want this, I want this, I want this.
Yeah.
And man, marriage, it's a growth. It's not a fall. Love is not a fall into. It's a growth. And all of that takes time, considerable time, to have that foundation that you need to weather whatever comes. And I think that's the other important thing to realize is you're going to have storms. And you have to weather it.
So that's what I was going to ask. What did that sort of transition look like for you guys? You kind of started on it earlier, but from getting from like the fun, dating, I found the dress, like from that phase to where you are now and have been for a long time in just a very solid, rich marriage. Because that falls apart for a lot of people too. You know, some people do get married and after a few years get divorced. So there's some sort of transition that happens there. What did that look like for y'all?
Well, so I feel like there's been a couple. So when the first transition, I remember I had to feel this apparently. It was on our wedding night. And it was like 2 a.m. and I just started bawling my eyes out because I pictured myself under the wings of my parents for 23 years. I was under their wings. It was safe. I knew them, obviously. And then all this
in a bubble.
Yes, in a bubble, just right under those wings that I've known forever. And then all of a sudden, it was like I got swooped out, and I'm put under the wings of a man that I've known. What was it, like 9 months? You're like, where are these chicken wings?
Not as long as your dad.
I know.
It was a little scary.
And I was like, whoa, like I knew that's what it was. I mean, I feel like it was so vivid. Yeah. Like the Lord, like had, said that this is what it's going to be. But I just had to have that transition of, you're done under there. Yeah. You're now under him. But it was like, it was like a loss of, because I don't like change. I'm a creature of habit. So I like things to stay the change. But again, the Lord has always moved me. Oh, stop it. The Lord has always made it like so much better. Yeah. And so, but I had to, and he was so sweet. Like he was like, this is completely normal. This happens to everybody. And I'm like, he doesn't know that. Like he's never talked to any other wife that's
you
probably
called
cried.
Your parents.
No, you said I could call them, and I didn't. The next day I did. And then my mom was like, I did the same thing, but I actually did call my parents in the middle of the night. But so that was a transition. And then after that, it was better. It was like, I'm where I'm supposed to be. But that was painful because it was like a loss of the protection of parents and what I've known and just a shift under someone else. But I felt it in every part of me. And then it was fine. It was like, okay, here we go. Yeah. And then I do remember in the first couple years of our marriage thinking like, people who are in love and married, like don't fight. And because my parents weren't like screamers or fighters or whatever. So I used to think that. And so whenever we would get in an argument and we would fight, I remember thinking something was probably wrong with us. Like, why is this happening? Like, why are we fighting? And then I remember one time we were sleeping and I had this dream and Stanley was telling me in my dream, he had a cup.
I wish I would have said this in real life.
He said, marriage is like oil and water. And he poured in the oil and then he poured in the water. And he sat it on the table. He's like, if you just let it sit there and don't do anything to it, it's going to stay separated. He said, he picked it up and he said, but in order for it to combine or mix, you have to shake it. It's hard. Like, it's frustrating. It takes a lot of work. And he just kept shaking it and shaking it. And the oil started mixing with the water. And I woke up from sleep and I was like, oh, I get it. I understand it. Like, I was like,
God
I
totally stepping in on that
yes,
one.
because I was like, you just told me. And he's like, told you what? This is not the first time this happened where I feel like you woke me up in a dream telling me something. But then from that moment on, it was like, man, work really does get you so much further. It gets it so much deeper. Like that growth that you're talking about. Like the infatuation, love, they're more surfacey, but to what it is now where it's like, you're literally in my blood or like a limb. You're connected. Yeah. It's deep. It's satisfying. It's just so much. There's so much more depth to it. But that takes work, and that takes.
It is satisfying.
You know, just and then he's very good with like working things through like quickly and moving on. I was always like, well, I have to like at least be mad at you for at least 3 days. I have to hang on to a grudge for a little bit. He's like, well, we're not going to turn off the lights.
I'm more like Stanley.
Yeah, just get it out.
Like,
yes.
You can
Let's
pout
shut
for
it
5
down
minutes
and
and that's enough.
Yes, but it's so much better because then it's like, whoa, we worked through that. We actually, have a solution, or even if we agree to disagree, at least we said what we needed to say and can move forward. And then it's so much better. And then it's just like you go deeper and deeper and deeper.
Yeah. And I would say, I think that I don't think the infatuation phase always goes away. I think it just renews itself.
Yeah.
Because I think that you get new seasons of it.
Yeah.
And it comes in different forms and in different ways. And so I think like when we first started dating, there was the infatuation of just the newness of the relationship. But then when we got married, there was an infatuation of the marriage aspect of everything and that unity. And then when that moves on, but you're still growing together, it's like the new seeds that you plant, all of a sudden they bud, and it's like springtime again, you know, and everything's pollinating, growing, and pushing forward, and there's new growth and there's new fruit to enjoy, and so the new seasons bring that new kind of life. From the first day we were married, there was the infatuation, but then that kind of moves on and you move into a new season of life where all of a sudden 5 years down the road, she's becoming a stay-at-home mom. And there's the infatuation with that, because then all of a sudden she's like, as a husband, you're like, man, she's like my hero. Because
that's not what I thought you were going to say. She's my mistress too. She's the maid, she's the chef.
Takes care of my babies.
But it's like she's like my hero, and so you become infatuated with that, like, because she's like the stay-at-home mom who's given up all this stuff. But then you see her as a mom, and you're like, whoa, like it's a whole new side of her to love, and that you become infatuated with. So then there's that. And then as you move into the toddler phase, like even with the phases with kids, like there's these new infatuation stages that come, because you're just like, dang, man, like you're an amazing person.
Yeah.
And you just see that grow and that develop, and with every new growth comes that deeper appreciation. And so it's like these new phases of infatuation, but they go deeper than they were before, because you're a lot deeper as a couple, which is so cool. I wouldn't trade that for a million years, man. I mean, I wouldn't trade it for all the money in the world, because it just is so special. And you see that development, and like when things come up and you come to a crossroads and you work things out, or you see her team up with you, and she's saying, hey, it doesn't matter. I'm with you, whatever you decide to do, however things are going to go, where you're going to move, however you decide to work on this project, or whatever's going on in this stage of your life. And to see that, all of a sudden it's like, oh man, she's like really connected with me. She's tied with me. She's not frustrated about this. And she's trusting in God's design. And that stirs up a whole nother set of infatuation. So it can come in seasons when done right, but it's a new appreciation. It's a new excitement. And every new life change brings about a new set of another infatuation stage, but it's just so much deeper.
Something that I'm seeing this like parallel as you're describing this, is like maybe that's something that's sort of like innately in men, is to like have these like constant new infatuations, and maybe that's somewhere hardwired for that purpose, but it's not playing out that way, because all the person knows is that they're craving almost like a drug, like the next hit and the next hit and the next hit. Yeah. But instead of growth with your wife, it's just another woman, another woman, another woman. And it's chasing new connections, new infatuation, well, she does this differently than that girl did.
Yeah.
And so it's like exciting, but it's not, you're actually getting more shallow with time instead of getting deeper with time.
Doubt.
And not to mention, all the scars that leaves and all
Right.
those connections that you make.
Right.
But so that's just interesting because I've never heard it described that way.
Yeah.
So maybe that is something that's kind of hardwired in
Yeah.
y'all. Because for us, I don't think it's that way. I don't think we have that chasing a high or chasing the infatuation.
Yeah, I kind of like where I am.
We kind of like safety, stability,
Right.
consistency.
Comfort, what we know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
When it comes to relationships, at
Right.
least.
Right. Yeah, and that very well could be. But I know it's exciting to see it develop, and it's exciting to see that growth continue to take place, especially as you get deeper and deeper into things. And man, I mean, it's priceless.
Yeah.
It really is priceless.
So we kind of talked about, the falling in love and how that's kind of like somewhat of a fairy tale. It's not reality.
Yeah.
What do you think about soulmates? Do y'all believe in soulmates? Because that's another, everyone's looking for their soulmate.
Define what you mean by soulmate.
That one person in the world that you just have this connection with that you just can't explain and you just feel like you were made for each other. And it's just that one. Or some people do believe there's multiple soulmates, but...
Good question. I've heard a lot of different thought processes on that. I personally don't believe that there's just one person. What I do believe is that there are certain people who can be very like-minded. You can be attracted to multiple different people, but at some point, I do believe that God unites two people together for a purpose and for a reason that goes far beyond just a soul connection. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so I think if we look at a bigger picture of our life and faith and the eternal viewpoint of what God's doing, I think a lot of times we tend to think, and we kind of get tunnel vision on things like that because we think, wow, this person's just made for me, yada, yada, yada. But we have to broaden our perspective because God's eternal perspective and what he is doing within the purposes of which he has designed even just this world and the personalities that he has put into this world to operate in this world. I believe that he can utilize two different people and bring them together, whether they're soulmates or not.
Yeah.
And unify them for a greater purpose through their kids, through their grandchildren and their great-grandchildren. Because we got to remember that God brings us together for things generationally. It's not just about her and I. And we've had this conversation recently. Like what God's doing in our lives doesn't just affect us. It affects our kids, and then it affects their kids, and then it affects their kids. And so there's a generational aspect of things that are happening here that are going to meet up with us in eternity. And I think in that kind of perspective, when we get a broader sense, it's not so much tunnel vision on, well, these two people are just made for one another.
Right.
They may be. And I do think that might exist to some point. But I don't want to go too deep on this, but it's like the difference between understanding free will and predestination.
Yeah.
Both exists, right? When we get into theological terms, when I look at scripture, I see that there's both.
Yeah.
And it's like you're underwater and there's a boat in the ocean, right? And you're underneath the boat and there's a rope over here and there's a rope over here, and one side is predestination, the other is free will. And if you pull too hard on this side, it's going to get out of balance. If you pull this too much on this side, it's going to get out. There's a perfect balance to it. I think the same is true with relationships. I think at times that there are two people who are clearly supposed to be together and they are clearly drawn together and they're soulmates. But on other times, I think that it can exist outside of that.
Yeah.
And how God chooses to work that out is between the individuals and how they're brought together. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So.
What do you think, Sarah?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know either. Yeah, because I'm like,
it's hard.
I knew like in that moment, I was like, he's going to be my husband. But like, could someone else have been? I don't know, maybe. But I know in that moment,
what if
that
something happened to him? What
yes,
if,
yeah. So I don't know. Like, I don't have an answer for that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I think the bottom line is the soulmates, the idea of soulmates that exists today is very glamorized to be something that it's not.
Yeah.
And like you said, kind of tunnel vision. People, it's easy to focus on that because it does sound so fairy tale like.
Yeah.
Of there's just this perfect person that you're going to find and you're going to
Right.
lock
Yeah.
eyes and you're going to
Yeah.
have this eternal connection that you
Right.
didn't know you had, and it's
Yeah.
just going to be happily ever after. But
Right.
I just don't think it's that way. I don't really know where that term even comes from,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah.
But I think it has to be somewhere in between. And whatever that soulmate feels like that feeling that we're all describing, I think can happen multiple times throughout your lifetime. And it's not necessarily a romantic partner.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, it's just something that, it's a person that was divinely put into your life.
Yes.
And they're supposed to be there.
And I feel like our souls have like connected over time more, if
Right.
that makes sense. It wasn't like I met him, I was
Yes.
like, oh, I feel it in my soul. Like,
He's your SOLE soulmate.
Yes,
Your
yes,
SOUL.
You're right,
yes,
right.
yeah.
So, Sarah, how did you know that with Stanley that he really loved you? And how did you know that he was someone that you could trust to not leave you or betray you? That's really hard for women. I think especially, people who have been jaded.
yes.
Now, for me especially, it's like everything's kind of hazy and
Yes.
it's not clear anymore. Who can you trust? Does he really love me, or is this love bombing? You
Yes.
know, it's all getting real murky.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I just know that when I started dating him, he was so different from any other guys that I have dated before. One of the things that we had talked about was that in my past relationships, it was almost like the guy needed me or worshipped me or whatever. It was like this need, and I liked being the one to save and make them better and make sure that they believed Jesus and had a relationship with Jesus. And I kind of liked that feeling of being needed. But when I started dating him, I was like, he does not need me. And in fact, when we got to the point where we were saying, I love you, he would sign his notes, I love you, and I love him more. He would always say that. And it was almost like, whoa, in a way, yeah, it's nice to be needed, but then just to be wanted, he doesn't need me. Yeah. He wants me. And in his pursuit of Jesus, desiring Jesus so much more than me, made me feel safe. And that's why anything that he would say, I just trust him. Because it was his pursuit of Jesus, and it was his love for Jesus, and it was his commitment to Jesus. It was all what he was doing to Jesus that is what made me feel loved and protected and safe, and to be able to trust him and know that what he was saying, when he would say, I love you, I knew it was more of this godly love, not this unhealthy roller coaster love that's the high and a crash, and then you're burnt and scathed at the bottom, and you're well, that was fun, let me do it again.
Toxic.
Yes, it was it just was healthy, and it was breathing. Then I noticed when I would get closer to the Lord, and he's getting closer to the Lord, we're getting closer together. Past relationships, I remember me growing closer to the Lord, and yet I was getting further away from my boyfriend. And it was those kind of things. It was just, again, I guess his faith and his love for Jesus and his pursuit of Jesus, which was just made me feel so safe and protected, and just knowing that what he was doing and saying was right and pure, and his commitment was real, because I see it with the Heavenly Father. So I would say that's kind of what made me know that, and that's what makes me feel safe. Our wedding day and our promise to Jesus on that day, it's not just between him and I. He made that promise to Jesus, so I'm like, yep, that's staying. He's stuck with me. Yes.
Yeah, we're held accountable to that.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I mean, goodness, that's serious.
So how does your love and your relationship today look different than it did that first day that you said I love you?
So I would just say it's so much deeper. It's just this, it's this safe, secure, it's pure, there's no question games. It's, I don't know, I always say, like, when we go on vacation, I, like, love those first 3 days so much because I can do what I want, when I want, I can eat what I want. Like, I'm just, I don't have other responsibilities to do, but then I get this longing to, like, come back and be home and, like, be this wife and this mom to serve. And there's something so much more deep and fulfilling. It's just so deep and fulfilling and satisfying in a different way.
Do you think that would be different if you were not a stay-at-home mom? Like, do you think that your relationship with Stanley and your kids and yourself would be different if you were, like, let's say you were a 6-figure corporate woman?
Yeah, I do, but I think that's because that's who I am. Like, I always grew up saying I want to be a mom. Like, I graduated high school and I said I'm going to Baylor to be a mom. I feel like that's what God created me to do. And so I feel like, again, it's in me, it's in my blood. Like, and I feel like, obviously, even when I was working, I loved my job and I did not want to leave. And I remember questioning it, but then it's like that thing was still in me. Like, this is for us. Like, this is what we're supposed to do. And in doing the Lord's will, it's just so deeply satisfying. Like, so I don't know. I mean, I can't say that's for everybody, but for me, I just have, like, even the wedding day, I know a lot of women, like, certain flowers or music or colors. I'm like, I don't care. Everybody else decide. As long as I'm walking away with this man and we're going on a honeymoon tomorrow, that's all I care about. Like, a marriage. That's all I just, that had just been in me to want to be a mom and a wife. And
yeah, but that was not an easy decision.
No, it wasn't.
Because you were a working woman, and you were doing very well, and you were doing very well at what you were doing. I mean, I think it was said to me, and I honestly, I don't think I could disagree after seeing Sarah make this move, but somebody said to me, they said, being a stay-at-home mom is like baptism. Like, when was the last time you ever heard somebody say they regret being baptized? And so, like, being a stay-at-home mom, and we've heard from a lot of people, a lot of mothers who in their latter years say, I wish I made that decision.
Yeah. I've heard, I regret not staying home with my kids and sacrificing our way of living. But I have not heard, and that was one thing that helped us decide, I guess, was people were coming up to me and they were, like, randomly saying this stuff. Like, it got to the point where I feel like the Lord was starting to be like, Sarah, I don't know how many times I can confirm this for you. But like, someone would come into my office randomly and be like, I just want to let you know, like, I regret not staying home with my kids when I grew up. And I had never heard someone say, I regret staying home with my kids. I never heard someone say that.
Yeah.
I wish I would have worked more.
Yes, I wish I would have, made more money so I could live, and have more things. And what I kept hearing was, the time with your kids goes by so fast. Like, I didn't get to see my kids first time they walk or the first time they laughed, because and so and again, I'm not saying God calls everyone to do that, but I feel like it was in me. Like, I do believe it is a very high call. And I do believe that, I mean, the Bible is pretty explicit about it, like where a woman's role should be. But again, as a husband, you can't just come in and be like, this is what you're going to do.
Yeah.
That's not how that works.
It can't happen,
because God has to prep her heart for that too. And she has to be willing to be obedient to that. And that's a whole other thing, because that's a big sacrifice.
Yeah, it was the hardest job I've ever done.
Yeah, but it's a sacrifice, again,
but
of
so rewarding.
Sacrificing something and pushing away the immediate gratification to see the future down the road of waiting and the patient gratification, which is so much better.
Right.
And we have seen that. And so I've seen that in my career. She has seen that as a mother, and what God has done with her career past that.
Yes, because that was another thing. I don't want to let go of dancing. Like, I don't want to let go of that. It's my passion. It's what I love.
Yeah.
And then for him to continue it in, like, such a big, fun way, and that I can still do the priority of these 2 kiddos first, and then be able to have that as the extra. It's like, oh, thank you, Jesus.
I think there really does have to be a willingness with both couples to be able to look at everything that God asks of us and get to the heart of it biblically. If if you're walking in faith, I do believe that is really critical. And you have to be willing to say, I'm going to put this on hold right now and wait. In anything, I think that's waiting. There's nothing wrong with waiting. And you don't know what God can do with that. Sure, he may bless you, and you and your husband may be able to live in a huge home and drive these fancy cars and all this kind of stuff. But man, at the end of the day, when you die, that's not going with you. And you will be held accountable in eternity for what God gave you responsibility over. As a husband and as a wife, as a mother and as a father. And I think you have to look at that real seriously, because he's going to hold you accountable to it. And I think a lot of people don't want to face that. I think we live in a world nowadays.
People run from accountability.
They run from accountability. They think, well, you can't judge me. This is just the way I feel. This is my truth. That's a bunch of junk, man. I mean, so be it. If you want to live your life like that, hats off to you.
Sure.
But you really could be missing something far greater and far better. We've experienced that. And the choice for her to stay at home that's scary for me, because I take the provision of the home very seriously. Like God calls the husband in Ephesians, he talks about if you're not able to provide for your family, you're worse off than an unbeliever. It's like, that's where the 40-pound loss came in. But it's like a
lot of pressure.
It is. There's a lot of weight there. But then again, you go back to what Christ says in Matthew, and he says, lay your burden on me. My burden's light. And so the burden I give you is going to be a lot lighter if you just trusted me. Just trusted me to take this. But we have a lot of people nowadays who don't want to do that. They don't want to be accountable. They don't want to think that they're going to be held accountable whenever they die. Even if they believe in Jesus, they don't want to hold to that. They don't want to believe that. And unfortunately, I think the enemies deceive them to think, hey, it's your life. You need to do what you want to do. But there could be something far greater than what you can think or imagine. And again, the Bible promises that. And it's, what do you choose to believe in? Do you choose to believe in the Word of God? Do you know it well enough to believe in it? Or do you want to just haphazardly live your life and hope for the best? Because again, you will be held accountable. And there's not one man I know, even Billy Graham, who you would say that man had probably had the most successful ministry of any individual, maybe on planet Earth, as far as leading people to Jesus, as far as a ministry that was effective. And even he, in his last days, said, I regret not being home with my family. I regret that I made the decisions I made family-wise. Because he's held accountable to that. And he's paid the price for that. And his family's paid the price for that.
I think a lot of single people, especially that have been dating for a while, are starting to realize a lot of things that you're saying. Like, everyone's kind of going, at least people who really do want family, which are most people. Most people want that. They're going, okay, we've been doing things our way, the wrong way. And like, there has to be something better. It's kind of, like everybody's putting their hands up. Like, we've all been burned. We've all been jaded. We all tried the one-night stand lifestyle. We tried the this and that. And like, everybody's in the same position of like, there has to be something better. How do we, somebody paved the way so that we can find it. But God already did that.
He did.
He did.
And I think you just have to be willing to wait and be patient for
and
what
learn.
that is.
What does that look like? And hearing from you guys is really special, because we can't just fly blind. We gotta have somebody who's like, hey, we did it. We were there. Now we're here. Like, this is how it turns out. You know?
Well, it's unfortunate, because there are a lot of guys that I know, and some really high-powered and influential people in society that I've heard even directly from their mouths say, man, I had everything. I had all the money I could want. I could have any girl I wanted at any time. I could drink. I could do drugs. Like, whatever. It was all at my fingertips. And I did it all. And I woke up one day going, is this it?
Feeling empty.
Is this it? Because I'm bored of this. I don't get bored of this.
No, it's
I don't get bored
fulfilling.
of it.
Is that a compliment?
It's so fulfilling,
know.
you know? Like
I know.
there's
interesting.
so much,
Keep you on
like
your
you
toes.
said, there's so much about it that fulfills. And
yeah.
like we were talking about just this weekend, like watching our kids, like I love what's coming up this week and seeing our kids involved in sports. And I'm like, man, if I could sell everything I had and just be independently fully wealthy and just watch my kids do this, I could be satisfied for a long time.
Yes.
Because it is so fulfilling, you know? And we have learned that just by being patient and waiting on what God has, the fulfillment that comes even in the process.
And doing things that we feel we're called to do don't even necessarily make sense. Like even me stepping away from work, that makes no sense. You're adding a human being to your family, but then you're taking away a salary. You're like, what? But then God miraculously provides for us. Like, and then it's bigger and better than what we could even imagine. So it's like those steps. I tell him, I was like, sometimes I feel like the Lord will tell you to like, you sit in the mud and you just gotta figure it out, or he won't give you an answer, or like you just have to wait, or it's jump off a cliff, or he provides a mountain, or he parts the Red Sea, like whatever it is. Like I want the Lord's will, because there's no scarier place to be than outside the Lord's will. So it's like, okay, let's go. But it's just been different on how he has kind of revealed us to go. But when you trust it and you do it on how he's designed it, it's like
God made a very clear design. I know that everybody who listens to this is not walking in that faith, and I know that you have.
We have people of all different walks of life. Who've been divorced, believers, non-believers, single moms. You know, you name it. So it's,
and I would say to that, because I know everybody's like, well, they're just, you know, they're so wrapped into their faith, and I mean, quite honestly, there's no way we could do what we've done without our faith in the Lord. Like that, there's absolutely no way, but his way is so perfect and it's so clear. Why would we want to do anything else? And so I think that for us has been so grounding and so foundational. And I don't know how you do it without that, truthfully, in the long term. And most of the families, most of the people that I know, I would say 99% of them that I know that have had long, successful marriages have been grounded in their faith. And that's there's proof in the pudding right there. I mean, there's a real solid degree of that.
There really is. I mean, if we're saying y'all are the picture perfect, y'all are the couple goals, and you're saying this is how we did it, then you know, you got to get with it or not. I mean, if this is what you want, then they're laying it out. This is how you get it. It's not easy. There's sacrifices, this and that, but everything is worth it.
It's so worth it. It's so worth it. And it goes far beyond anything you could ever imagine. And I think we've been put in scenarios, we've gotten to do things as a couple that there are times I'm like, I cannot believe we're here right now.
It's not always rainbows and butterflies, but sometimes it is. And it's like,
a lot of times.
This is like
a lot of times
it
is. Yeah. I mean, there's, and like we've talked about, like there have been moments I feel like it has been, some people are like, how do you mean it's like a heavenly moment? And like when I look at what the Bible talks about with heaven, like there's no tears, it's fully joy. There's no worry, no anxiety, no fear. And there have been so many moments where we've had that. And it has just, and we look back on that with fondness. We look back on it with tears in our eyes at times, because it's just, it's otherworldly.
And it hits us both at the same time.
And we're like, we're in a heaven,
connected.
We're in a heaven moment right now. And I don't mean that to be over spiritualized. It just, there's no worry, there's no fear. Every providence is there, and joy is through the roof. And you're just like, good night. This is what this feels like. It's total freedom. And it's like freedom from everything that would push you down and hinder you. It's complete, and it's awe awakening.
Sarah has always said it feels like breathing. When we talk about it, I pull everything out of her that I ever need to describe to me what this is. How did you get it? How did it happen? To explain it to me, because when you don't know, you don't know. And so I always come back to that. I even saw someone else say that. Someone else that I followed the other day on Instagram, she said the same thing. It's just, it feels like it's easy, like breathing.
It's so free.
And it's, I mean, it's this sense of freedom that is, you can't even put it into words. It goes so far beyond that. And it's a reality though that's existing like right then and there.
Yeah.
And you're like, if I weren't experiencing this right now, I don't think I could believe that this could exist.
Yeah.
But it really does. And Warren Wiersbe is a great Bible teacher and commentator I follow, but he talks about that. He says when we, in our family lives, when we follow the Lord as we are supposed to, he said he will give us those glimpses of heaven more often than not. And he said, and we get a sense of what heaven really will feel like, even though we're on earth. And you do, and it is the craziest thing, but it's amazing. And God's like, I can't let you live in this for a moment, and you don't want to depart from it. Like, there's a moment that I think we go back to often, and we're like, if we could stay in that moment forever. Forever. And it was a couple of hours, but I'll never forget it. And even it was 2. And he even is like,
Really?
do you remember
Yes.
when it connected with him so much? I mean, it is otherworldly, but it's there. And to have those kind of moments on earth, it's very rare. It's very rare. And so I mean, man, it's just God's design. It's perfection. And that's what perfection is. No worry, no hindrance, all joy, in exceeding amounts beyond anything you could ever even imagine. That's heaven.
It's amazing.
You know?
I think that's a perfect kind of note to leave everybody with.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's bigger than just falling in love and a wedding and a ring, a diamond and a marriage and you know, posting all that on Instagram. It's way more than that if you commit yourself to it. I would like to ask a favor of you, if you can just kind of like say a prayer for us in closing. Kind of a very big prayer, like just kind of over the whole dating culture and what we're going through. That includes people who know God, who don't know God. But just, you know, my hope and my prayer in my little mini podcast, little contribution into the world is to like help us steer back in the right direction and to use people's testimonies to do that. The good and the bad. You know, all of it. So if you would do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So God, I just come before you, and I thank you for this time. I thank you for what Natalie's doing, and I just thank you for what she is pursuing and seeking to put truth, guided by your hand, the truth of your word out there. And God, I pray that you'd bless her efforts, that you would reward them and give her favor in them. But Lord, I do pray just for the scenario that's at hand. And I pray for a generation of people moving into the dating world, or that are in the dating world. I pray for a reawakening of your truth in their lives, of your accountability, and just an awakening of what the real beauty of a dating relationship and a marriage can look like, and the wonder and the beauty of that commitment that you've called us to. It's a covenant to take seriously. It's not a fairy tale, but it can be something so far beyond what the world creates as a fairy tale into a heaven-like stratosphere that is so beyond words of comprehension and thoughts of and anything that we can even fully comprehend. And we don't even have words adequate enough to explain it or even to really talk about it. So I just pray that you would do a reawakening, a revival of sorts in the dating world that brings people into the wonderful, wonderful covenant of a relationship and a marriage that brings so much joy and so much fulfillment that they can't stop talking about it, that reimagines what dating looks like from your standpoint, not from the world. Because what the world will try to do is it'll try to paint a picture that is not reality. And your reality is so far beyond that and so much better. And so I pray that that's what people would begin to feel and understand. And that's what they would begin to exist in. Your reality and not the world's. And I pray that that fulfillment would be a revival and an awakening that leads into generational, that passes down from generation to generation and leads people into a relationship with you, as well as sets up healthy, successful marriages that are a ministry to the world of what a real, true commitment and covenant looks like, that is joyful and exuberant beyond words. We love you and we thank you for this time. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's awesome.
Come say hi. Come say hi to the camera real quick. Let's see. Okay, come say hi.
Come on.
Come say hi.
Oh.
Come on. Oh.
The dog that Stanley never wanted.
I know. Yes,
Can you tell they hate each other?
He said we'd never have an inside dog, and especially one that sheds. And she snows all over our house.
Are you so excited to be up here? Because you never want to get up here. Look at you.
Yeah, just silly dog.
Or you don't ever allow it up here.
You're not. I know.
Rufus is double for today.
Oh,
Sorry, can
yes.
you
Have him.
speak?
Speak.
Speak.
I don't know if she'll
Speak.
speak right by my ear. It's loud.
Speak. Oh, not in my ear.
She's not going to do it.
Oh, you're licking my mouth.
Thank you all so much for tuning in to today's episode of That's What He Said. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and I hope you're taking away something valuable that will benefit your dating life. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please give this show a follow, rate, and review. And if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe, like this video, and most importantly, comment below because I want to hear what you said. See you next time.